Vessel of Hatred, last chance for Diablo 4.
Yes, gentlemen and Herodrum of all ages, the Vessel of Hatred expansion is coming out for Diablo 4 in just a couple of weeks from now. And with it comes the biggest changes that the game has seen since its release. This is no mere season, it is an expansion. And on top of just being a massive amount of new content, it's also something that you have to pay for to access the majority of it. You can still interact with Season 6 for free, and future seasons of course too, but the new region, Nahantu, the class Spiritborn, the new activities, and the powers associated with all of that are all locked behind the expansion paywall, which makes this a sort of really big and important moment for the game when this releases. This expansion will answer a relatively simple question: will Diablo 4 continue to not just survive, but also flourish and thrive and grow to be a better and better game over time as it has been, or is this just sort of the end of the line? There is an extremely vocal group out there, and we see them on every one of our own videos in the comments as well, talking about how Diablo 4 is a dead game, how it's a bad game, how we're all dumb for playing it, whatever you want to say, I guess. But the point is that these people do exist, and they...
And man, those people, they just like get into all the Diablo 4 videos and literally comment, oh, this game is so bad. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you wasting your life watching a Diablo video, a game you don't think is good, and telling people how bad the game is? Like, why?
Weren't there at the game.
Did they have nothing better to do?
Space launch, and only started popping up after some rough patches of updates happened for the game. Things like Season 1 and the balance patch that started that all off, or Season 3 just being extremely lackluster.
Don't they have any good games to play? 2K hours, but game is bad.
Whenever these sort of events happened, the voices grow louder and the group grows larger. And if you listen to them, you'd think there was no reason to be playing this game anymore and that no one actually did. However, I want to be extremely clear that the people who act this way and say these things are actually not the majority of the people who play or played Diablo 4.
Exactly.
Far from it, in fact. Hell, I would...
Nah, he's completely right. I'll link this video below. Like, it's from Rage Gaming Videos.
Hazard a guess and say that anyone saying those things hasn't even played the two most recent seasons of the game at all, because both Season 4 and Season 5 have made compounding exceptional changes to increase the quality of the game across the board in a way that shows not only are the developers interested in making the game better, but that they have some pretty good ideas for how to do so as well. I'm not going to walk in here and say that the game is now flawless. No, it still has a fair bit of work to do and places to improve, but it's not what the dissenting voices say it is by any means. It's not this just bad thing that refuses to change in any good way. It is changing and it is getting better. That said, Diablo has been on a real upswing, and for
I think if the game Diablo 4 released in the, let's say, Season 4 state, it would have been so positively received, and they would have also had like a lot of longevity, right? But I know, like, for Season 4, like, most people already quit the game before they made the game like in this good state that it is in right now. And obviously they have to keep improving to not like fall off again, because eventually even the Season 4 state of the game is getting boring.
Reference of this, we have the Steam charts of the current player base for the game on Steam. Obviously, not only is PC not the only platform for the game, but Battle.net has a larger player base on PC than Steam itself does too. So this is essentially just the best trackable sample size to show the waves in players.
I think the Hordes was a massive W for the game, yes. And it's becoming the core game, so you're gonna have Hordes in Season 6, and I think it's gonna be a very good way to target farm ancestrals and also to get yourself a lot of masterwork material.
It's not the full number. Don't pay attention to the number of players, pay attention to the actual graph and the sort of flow of it. The game was less popular when first released on Steam in Season 2 than it became right at the start of Season 4. Then its second highest peak was at the very beginning of Season 5, which has actually kept relatively consistent since then. Again, a lot more people than they had at the launch of the game on Steam. The Diablo experience is extremely unique among games, and even in the world of ARPGs, Diablo sits upon the specific throne of approachability and highly immersive storytelling, as well as just having great accessibility functions as a game. The world design in this game, the campaign, the lore, the cutscenes, and the sheer ease of gameplay until you reach proper endgame purposeful challenges.
I think Diablo 4 is a game that is very, very easy to get into. If you compare it to PoE, like definitely PoE has a lot more depth in the end and a lot more endgame, obviously. But this is something that they definitely recognized, and they are changing for PoE 2 as well, where the barrier of entry in PoE 1, like people keep saying, yeah, you need like a PhD, you need to study Path of Exile before you can get even into Path of Exile 1. So I'm really curious on how they bridge this gap in PoE 2. And again, in Diablo 4, it's rather easy. Like, you just start with whatever class you like, and you just start. Like, you don't really need to You know, like know about like all this, like, you know, 30 different league mechanics that are in the game, you know, since the past 10 years and stuff. There's a lot of content in PoE, but it's also very overwhelming for somebody that just wants to try the game.
Of course, allows even the most casual of player to enjoy the majority of what the game has to offer. And that's the big audience.
And the story and the cutscenes here were so sick.
That grabbed the game and ran off with it. That's the audience that has made the game super successful, and that is the audience that is most likely to not care too much about the seasons.
PoE, you break a character by misclicking one skill point. And we had this in Diablo 2 at the start, before they added the tokens, right? Like you misclick a skill point and you're already like feeling bad about it. So I like that you have this choice to basically like revert if you don't want that. And you're not breaking your character, you're only breaking your items in Diablo 4. And they're even changing some of that part, right? With the scroll of unbreaking.
In between, but definitely will care about an expansion that promises more new world design, a brand new campaign, new lore, a new class, and that same level of immersive storytelling packaging it all together. Essentially, that's the long way of saying that this game will always have an audience willing to play it, especially with an upward trend in quality.
I mean, it's cutscenes like this that just, dude, it just pulls in so many players. Like this cutscene, man.
Which we are now firmly on. But the quality of this expansion is what will truly matter, not just for the next few months, but for years to come in the live service model of
And we'll get more of these cutscenes, hopefully, with Mephisto and the Vessel of Hatred here in just 2 weeks.
Diablo 4. The original vision for the game that we know of was to release one expansion every year. Every single year. We don't know if this is still the case, of course, but we know multiple expansions is definitely the plan regardless.
I think they went a little bit back on this, like from what I like heard in the interviews and like reading a bit between the lines. Like Rod Ferguson, he did say this, annual, which means basically every year there's going to be an expansion. But I think they are more leaning towards the 1.5 years for an expansion. Like we know, like Diablo 4 released in the summer, and now we have October again for the Vessel of Hatred, which is roughly 1.5 years later. And then, you know, maybe at the beginning of 2026 we will get the Paladin and the second expansion. That would be my guess right now. Oh, we'll see. I mean, if we get the expansion next year, I'm all for it. But I think they should just rather make sure that the quality is good. And I think every 1.5 years or something would be very cool. And yeah, rather take longer and make a very good expansion than rush it and do it yearly, right? That's at least my take.
Of timeline. And so this becomes a very important moment. If the expansion is game-changing in a good way, if it is big in a positive direction, if the quality of the new region, the new class, or the new campaign is all to a high enough standard that it reminds people of how it felt to first go through the game, if not better, then of course the expansion will do well, and it will bode very well for the future of the game, leading into more expansions coming in future years too. It will build up a sort of trust of an expectation of quality, regardless of the endgame.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. $40 per expansion every year, or every 1.5 years is still quite a lot, right? But overall, like, if you compare it to, like, Reaper of Souls, I think it cost, Reaper of Souls Diablo 3's expansion cost $40. And that was, like, you know, 10 years ago. So they haven't really, and there was a lot of inflation since then. So I think the price point of $40 for the base expansion, in my opinion, is justified. Because there is a lot of content. And again, comparing this to historic pricing, I think it's okay.
Gameplay, the mass amount of people who played the base game didn't really stick around for.
And they didn't do any, like, you know, of the pre-order, like early access, like pay an extra $100 and play 2 days earlier. They didn't do any of that. So I was really positively surprised.
Endgame or for seasons, they came for the story and for the world, and they will come back every time that more story and more world is added in, as long as it is still up to that same standard. So in that way, if they nail that aspect, then the game will always have a level of success tied to it even in future years.
And they always nail this, right? Like the story is great in Diablo. Then you have the cinematics, the world building, the graphics, like that's just all top notch. So I think these players will definitely come back. I mean, just they gotta do trailers like this Hell Fight trailer. If they keep doing these trailers, or even the new Mephisto trailer, like, yes, People
pretty
will
much
come back.
everlasting until they miss the mark on an expansion. However, there is also the entire rest of the package that matters to the rest of us, because while the majority of the people who played the game do so for the sake of the experience, the majority of the time played within the game lays with those who love the endgame systems, who love ARPG grind sessions, and who devote themselves to each and every season that comes out for the game, making the most out of at least one character or build and just play a ton. These are generally the players who will buy loads of cosmetics in the shop as well, which they obviously want to encourage, and so of course the developers want everyone to be happy here, not just the casual players. That said, the more endgame focused seasonal crowd has been eating relatively well the last few months as well. As I mentioned before, the game has hit higher levels of player base in Season 4 and 5 than it has since the very beginning, and the main reason for that is that they are just making really big, sweeping, but meaningful changes, and word of mouth is spreading that back to the people who gave up on the game previously. But
yeah, I think Season 4 was definitely like the change like for this. They had like a downwards trend and Season 4 broke it. With the new itemization and stuff, so many people came back and it was great.
The expansion also gives a sort of opportunity for new players to jump on the bandwagon once more, to hop in without feeling like they are too far behind or out of the loop, so again this will be very telling for that reason as well. The main thing that remains to be seen, at least in my eyes, is how well the expansion will retain people after the first couple of months, how much this surge of player base will last. Will it end before Season 7 even starts, or will the game ride this wave all the way until its next expansion? Obviously only time will be able to give us some answers to that, but the best way of achieving this is to appeal to the largest crowd possible. From the look of it, the cutscenes, the campaign, all of the people who just want the story to be continued will be happy regardless. It looks like they're hitting the mark on that, of course. So the question mark really all lays with the new activity, with the functionality of the new class, the Spiritborn.
I also think the end game is still a big part. Like even if you're a casual player, like at some point you will be at least a part of the end game. And you gotta feel like there's something meaningful, something that is worth it to do, even as a casual player. So yeah, you'll be happy, even if you only play a couple hours a day with the story, with the cinematics. But like, you know, after a few weeks, you want to do something in the end game. And if you can still, you know, improve your character in a meaningful and fun way, that's just a win for all of them.
And at an endgame level, especially because I have played it in early game in an early access event at Blizzard HQ, and I can tell you that this class is fun as all hell to play, and while it remains to be seen how strong it will be in the endgame, it is pretty obvious as a game design philosophy that you would rather have the big new class that you're adding to the game be...
Yo man, this Razor Wings spam here is fantastic though. Yes.
That you would rather have the big new class that you're adding to the game be overpowered than underpowered, so I would expect that to be reflected in the gameplay. The question is just how it feels as opposed to the pure strength. And the thing is, this class is also sort of a theory crafter's dream, which in itself appeals heavily to the more endgame and seasonal focused folks that I was talking about before. It has an incredible amount of depth to the class. It has a
Dude, the class Spiritborn has such crazy depth, much more I think than the existing classes, because you can literally combine everything with everything, and you can get all these different tags from the Spirit Hall, you can get all these different tags from new unique items that they added, and man, there's gonna be something crazy on the Spiritborn for sure here in a few weeks.
Fairly staggering number of different ways you can build it, and again, once you actually have a build set up for it, it's just plain fun to play. The other questions then come with the mercenary system and how it feels to actually use, if it feels like a forced thing that you have to reach the power levels to do the challenging content. However, the actual difficulty scaling in the PTR, without the mercenary system even existing, did feel pretty telling to say it will just sort of be a bonus rather than something that is required. As well, there was Karast Undercity as an activity, and whether it will stay relevant on high difficulty in endgame, which we just don't know, and the Dark Citadel as the series' first co-op required dungeon activity, and how that will function and how players will react to it too, and of course how much people are willing to do it week after week to get their rewards and just to actually experience the whole thing. Personally,
we also almost don't know anything about the Kurast Undercity. We know so much about the Dark Citadel, but the Undercity, which is the second endgame, this like timed dungeon, we don't know almost anything about.
At this stage, I'm fairly optimistic for the expansion. The game has been on an upward trend of quality in general. It feels like they found their footing, and while there were some awkward bits along the way inside of the PTR that we played a few weeks ago, that's sort of exactly the point of the PTR existing, right?
The PTR was
Season 4 and Season 5 both proved that changes made after a PTR could significantly enhance the experience, and so really I'm expecting some pretty good things to pop up when they tell us what the changes are in a stream that'll happen in the next next couple of weeks. Put simply, on some level, this expansion will always be the sort of last chance for Diablo 4 for a lot of people, because those people specifically just haven't really...
I don't know if that's true though. Like, how many last chances is Diablo gonna get? Or Blizzard as well. Like, I remember all these videos, like this is Blizzard's last chance. The last chance. How many are we gonna get? I think, you know, if they do, like, let's say this expansion isn't great. I don't think it's gonna happen, but let's say it flops for the majority of players. I don't think it will, but again, it could. They bring the Paladin, you know, in half a year, or in 1.5 years, or in 1 year, I think people will still come back to play the Paladin. You know, and this is like worst case scenario. So I don't think it's like necessarily the last chance. Like, they do this holy class, I don't know, you're fighting Diablo in Diablo 4, people are gonna come back no matter what.
Last chance for Diablo 4 for a lot of people, because those people specifically just haven't really been interested in the seasonal content that is based on long-term game improvements. But the expansion is a proper injection of new stuff, new actual content for the game. And we've been told that Season 6 as well, which happens at the same time, will have full-on seasonal powers tied to it, more like the first 3 seasons. So at least in a theoretical sense, it has a decent chance of hitting the mark and bringing players who quit the game in the past possibly back in, whether casual or not. They are trying to make sure that there is a lot of this game for everyone in the expansion. Personally, I just view this as the next step for the game. If it is a bad step that winds up falling down a staircase, then future expansions will be much less of an intriguing thing to actually ponder. But if the expansion is high enough quality to be received with praise, it will set this game up for a very strong run as a live service product running.
I think the quality of the expansion, like in terms of like raw content that you're getting for $40 is a lot. Like, you get the mercenaries, you get the runes, you get new skills on each class, you get a full new area with everything that's coming with it. You get a full new class, you get not one, but you get 2 endgame activities, the Dark Citadel and the Kurast Undercity. You're getting the story, you're getting the cinematics, like, you're getting new itemization. Like, we're getting even a seasonal theme too on top of this. We're getting a lot of stuff.
Running in to the next few years. That's it for today then, everyone. Just a sort of discussion about the state of Diablo 4 and its player base and how all of this may or may not change when the expansion releases in a couple of weeks. Things will change in the community when this happens, of course, though whether for better or...
Yes, full new Paragon board, plus more Paragons. New Paragon system.
In a couple of weeks. Things will change in the community when this happens, of course, though whether for better or worse is simply yet to be seen. So let's just hope for better. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay...
And Horadrim of all.
Sweets.
That guy's pretty funny. This was from Rage Gaming Videos. I'll link it below. I'm not even subscribed. Now we are. Leave a like, leave a sub. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think it's gonna be Diablo's last chance. Like, they just dangle a Paladin and they dangle like a crazy cinematic and that we are fighting Diablo in Diablo 4 rather than Lilith. I think players will come back even if this expansion would flop. I don't think it's gonna flop. But, you know, worst case, I think people will still come back. So that's why I think it's not necessarily gonna be the last chance. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments. Check out Rage Gaming Videos. GG. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like or a comment. I'm also live on Twitch almost every day, so come and say hi.